Pretty much enough.
Okay.
What?
Not during shiur.
What?
Are you awake tonight?
No.
Am I awake? Very much so.
Oh, good.
Well, you're one of the few.
Halacha Daled. Daf Hey Amud Al Shein Bo Yidiyah Basof. The Tchil B'Lo Basof. On a case where there is no awareness. Now it's all about a person. We're continuing on with the topic of the past few Shnais is the halacha of Tumas Mikdash V'Kadosh, of an individual who was defiled either karbanos by eating them when he's tamei, or enter the Beis Hamikdash when he's tamei. We said in order to bring the korban oil of Yored, which is the shvuah, the korban in common for several sins, including false oaths and being mitame the Beis Hamikdash or a kodesh, you have to have yediyah b'tchila and yediyah b'sof. You have to be aware that you're tamei before entering the Beis Hamikdash or eating the korban, and become aware after having eaten the kodesh or having entered the Beis Hamikdash that you were tamei at the time. So yediyah b'tchila b'sof. Yediyah b'tchila b'sof need awareness at the beginning and at the end, and helim b'emtza, and a concealment, the forgetfulness in the middle. Now, what about a case of she'en bo yediyah b'tchila v'lo b'sof? You never knew that you were tamei and you entered the Beis Hamikdash or kodesh. So in that sirei golim, the goats brought on Yom Tov. You said we've read by almost all the Haftorah. I mean, by all the maftirs and by all the Muslims who see Rizim Echad L'chatos, and every yontif they would bring one goat as a chatos. So the Usir Rosh Chodesh and the Tshuva Rosh Chodesh as well, Mechaprin, they atone for this sin of unaware tumah. Divrei Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon divides that in half. Rabbi Shimon says not all of them. So regalim, only the goats brought on Yom Tovim. Avalo Sir Rosh Chodeshim, but not the goats brought on Rosh Chodesh. Amasirei Rosh Chodeshim Mechaprim. What is the Sir of Rosh Chodeshim? The goat brought on Rosh Chodesh is the chatas to atone for. Al Tor Shachol Satamei. A different thing that we've been talking about till now. A person who was Tor but ate a Tomei korban. Till we talking about a person who's Tomei either into the Beis Hamikdash or a Kodesh. Now talking about a person who was Tor who ate Tomei, right? Raimeh says Kol Hasilin Kapol Rosun Shavah. All goats atone for the same thing. Al Tumas Mikdash v'Kodoshav, on the Tumah of the Beis Hamikdash and the Kodesh. What does that mean? That includes also the goats of Yom Kippur. Okay, we're going to speak about that actually more explicitly tomorrow. Hi, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon said, and Rosh Hashanah as well. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Shimon said, Sirei Rosh Chodeshim. Rabbi Shimon said, this is getting back, that was our mayor. Rabbi Shimon says, Sirei Rosh Chodeshim, the goats of Rosh Chodesh, Mechapin atone for al Tor Shachol Tomei, on the person who was Torah ate Tomei food, Tomei Kodesh, right, where the korban was Tomei. V'shel Golim, and the goats brought on Yom Tif, Mechapim al she'en bo yediyah lo b'tchila v'lo b'sof. The goats brought on Yom Tif atone for cases where at no time was the individual aware that he was Tomei when he entered the Beis Hamikdash or when he ate the korban. V'shel Yom Kippurim, and the goats brought on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Shimon says, Mechapin al she'en bo yediyah b'tchila, new case, a case of the person was not aware before he ate the Kodesh or entered the Beis Hamikdash who was Tomei. But he became aware subsequent after the fact. Amrlo, so there's Talmidim said to Rabbi Shimon, Mind shekarbu zebezeh, if you have a goat left over from one yontif, can you bring it on a Rosh Chodesh instead? Or can you bring it on another yontif? Or can you bring it on Yom Kippur instead? Amrlo, so they said, Amrlan said, yes, yikarvu. You can use the goat which is designated for one yontif, for Rosh Chodesh or Yom Kippur, not sacrifice then, for a subsequent Rosh Chodesh, Yom Kippur, or yontif. So Amar Lo said to him, how can you say this? Ben Kaparos and Shabbos, since they atone for different things. One atones for a case where you're not aware about it before, but you became aware afterwards. One atones for a case where you never were aware, neither before nor after. Another one atones for a case of an individual who was Torah, who ate Tame, right? So how can you say that they're interchangeable? And Shabbos, since they don't atone for the same thing, how can they be sacrificed one in lieu of the other? So he said, bottom line is they have a common denominator. They all come to atone for the two of the base of Mikdash and the Kochim and Korbanos, and therefore they can all be interchangeable with each other because of that lowest common denominator, that somehow they pertain to Tumah and to Kodesh. Okay? That's the mission. It says what Rabbi Lezer B'Shem Rabbi Yosha said. Rabbi Lezer named Rabbi Yosha said, time in Rabbi Yehuda. What is the logic? Rabbi Yehuda says that the soil of Rosh Chodesh atones for a case where there's no awareness, neither before nor after that you enter the place on Mikdash or ate the korban, that you were Tomei, but in fact you were. The goat is an atonement for God. What's mean atonement for God? If nobody knows about the sin other than God, because you were not aware neither before nor afterwards, the goat of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper. And the Ela Rosh Chodesh, I know that's true about the goat of Rosh Chodesh. I know it's true about the goats of Yom Tovim. Rabbi Zeh said, Usoir. Vav most of all generation by all those karbanos, all those goats, Yom Tovim says Usoir. With a Vav. So that teaches us that it atones for all the Yom Tovim. Similarly, the extra Vav, the superfluous, teaches us that most of it in Rishon, that they're all obviously somehow connected to the initial side. The initial side, the first one mentioned in the Rosh Chodesh, they all hark back to that one, and therefore they all atone for the same thing, for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadosha. And again, in a case, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a case where you did not aware neither the beginning nor the end. Rabbi Zimra, Rabbi Shem, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Zimra, Rabbi Lezer, name Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yaakov Achasev, Shem, Rabbi Yochanan. It says about the korban brought on the first day that they consecrated the Mishkan. Who knows what day it was? Date. What day was the first day they consecrated the Mishkan?
No,
Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Right, first day of the month of Nisan. Very good. So they finished building it, Hanukkah it says, but they didn't actually consecrate to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So, what? So it says that when Moshe confronts Aaron for not having eaten it, he gets annoyed at him. He says, well, he didn't eat it because why didn't he eat it? Why didn't Aaron eat it? Why was he? No, he wasn't Tomei. Death of Nadav and Avihu, right? So that he was an onen, so he didn't eat it. Okay. So question is, so he said, Moshe was upset. He said, how come you guys didn't eat the korban, right? So he says, he gave it to you to bear the iniquities of the congregation. Manakeh, what are we talking about? Which goat? There are three chatos that they. In Misoyer Nachshon, if it was the goat brought by Nachshon ben Aminadav as the first Nasi, because we know the first 12 days of Nisan, 12 Nasim sacrificed. So then, Al Shifta Mechaper, it only atones for his tribe, it doesn't atone for the rest of Am Yisrael. In Misoyer Shem Kippur, the Soyer Yom Kippur, now Soyer Yom Kippur is not necessarily true. I mean, not necessarily the case, because obviously it wasn't Yom Kippur, it was Chodesh Nisan. What it means is that it was the 8th day of the Miluim, the 8th day of the consecration period. And the 8th day of Miluim has a soyer of, which is similar to the soyer of Yom Kippurim. I don't know exactly how. I guess it's it was a one time, just like the Miluim are come after 8 days of preparation. I mean, this is the 8th day after the day's preparation. So the Kohen Gadol separated 7 days before Yom Kippur, and the Yom Kippur is the 8th day. The Bnei Moshe gives another shot that day the Chet of Ega was atoned for them, and therefore was like Yom Kippur. So when it says so Yom Kippur, it means the special Korban Chatos which brought because it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the last day, the Miluim, and the initial, then the atonement of the Chet Ego. So Ein Chet V'Odoros. Okay, it's how does Moshe Rabbeinu know that it atoned? It's unique Korban. Maybe that's a special parameter to it. Okay, rather talk about B'Soyesh Rosh Chodoshim. It's about the God of Rosh Chodesh. So we see that the God of Rosh Chodesh is Mechaper. My Kedun, how do we know what it's Mechaper on? How do we judge this out? Then we're going to see something it says here, bears the sins. The comment it says later on, to see someone bearing the sins. Where does it say in Minasah Esavon HaKadoshim? Aaron bears the sin of the Kodshim. Just like over there, there's words missing here. Gilin and Brian brings it down. Tumas Kadoshim, just like over there, it's talking about bearing the sin of the Karbonos. Afkan Tumas Kochim, so too here, it's the sin of the Karbonos. Now here actually we should have skip down one line. The Gilin Ephraim inserts the next line here. You see it in the last 3 words in the next line. What did you see this say? In other words, which you prefer to say about? The Torah Shachal Tameh, is it atoning for a guy who's Torah away to Tameh Korban? Or name it, we say B'Tameh Shachal Torah, that this Korban is atoning for a guy who's Tameh away to Torah Korban. So it says the Gemara, going back to where we were before. Avon Krevim should be again Mala Halon. Should also say again Malon, should say twice. We read it already once before. No, we didn't read it before. We're going to read it now. Malon Avon Krevim V'Lovon Makrivin. Over there where it says that Aaron should bear the iniquities, it's about an Aveh which concerns the thing which is sacrificed. Not the Aveh of the thing which is the people who are sacrificing. Avkan Avon Krevim V'Lovon Makrivim. So it's here it's about the sin of the thing which is being sacrificed, and not the sin of the sacrificer. So it means a person who's tahar, who's eating tameh. That's the sin of the sacrificed item, not the sin of the person who's sacrificing it. Okay, I'm Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yehuda cholak shitas Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds all theory, brought it all times, all mechaper to us mitash kadashim. Rabbi Yehuda divides that shita, because Rabbi Yehuda holds it's not always true. It's only true about Sira Golim, Sira Rosh Chodashim. Those brought on Tovim, those brought on Rosh Chodashim, not the ones brought on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay? So, so that Rabbi Meir holds all of them, Rabbi Yehuda holds some of them. And Rabbi Shimon Cholak Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, Shimon takes it a further step. He says not even all of them, rather it's only the Sira Regolim which atone for the the one anybody deal lo b'tchila v'sof, the ones where nobody is aware of it. The seirim of Rosh Chodashim atone for somebody else. They atone for somebody who's tar, who ate a korban which is tameh. Okay, Moida Rabbi Meir. Again, Ephraim changed it, all enforcement changed it more or less the same way. Moida Rabbi Meir concedes b'soyer nasa b'ifnim, that the goat, although it's true that the goat brought on Yom Kippur atoned for the Aveira of Tumas Mikdash v'Kadosha, even the goat which was brought inside the Kodesh Kadosh, not Kodesh Kadosh, inside the Kodesh, right? Its blood is sprinkled on what? Remember its blood sprinkled on? Barochas, right. So even though it atones for Tumas Mikdash Kadoshav, nevertheless, Shmoy, he concedes, Shemechaper Elotoila. It doesn't completely atone, but rather it leaves you dangling. Meaning that if ever subsequently you find out that you actually were tameh, you must bring your own korban. Okay? It doesn't completely atone the atonement. Okay? The scientist is going to Rabbi Yoina B'Shem Rabbi Zira, who says, "V'aso chatos." You make that korban in the Beit Hamikdash, the korban which goes to the parochas. Chatos, makes the chatas cover litlia. It makes it. It sets it for dangling. In other words, shelo yishtaneh, that it shouldn't change. Now, it's not clear exactly what it means. It shouldn't change, but the way the Korashai Teretz Yisrael puts it, that it means that it is the chatos, or so hu chatos. It's supposed to be a chatos, but it sounds like it's a chatos, because so chatos, it is a chatos, but there are other ones which are potentially a chatos as well. In other words, it's like a mute. The extra vav is a mute. But it could have been sa chatos, I guess, or some of the other permutation. But the vav means it's a mute. It's a restriction. In other words, it's not totally mechaper. It's only toilet. So there are other pshatim here, which the Ritbaz gives a different pshat in the Korban Eidah in the back gives a different shot, but I think I like this shot the best. And now, in other words, that it's limited. In other words, that your chiyuv. Let me translate it a little bit better. So chatas kavod tliya, the vav to make it says that the chatas is limited in effect. Shelo yishtaneh, and it doesn't change, meaning it doesn't change his potential obligation to perhaps bring his own carbon someday. Yes?
Well, I'm just saying, I see the Pnei Moshe says that it's Tolish, B'yesh, or Yediyah B'tchil B'ova. So those...
Yeah, I should have made that clear. Obviously, if Ein Bo Yediyah Lo B'tchila, if it was a case where Ein Bo Yediyah B'tchila, it can never come to a carbon, right? Because the only way you can ever come to a korban is personal korban, is if you had yediyah b'tchila and yediyah b'sof. So if there's no yediyah b'tchila, by definition, you'll never be in korban. So by definition, one of the other korbanos of other yom tovim will cover it. But if you had yediyah b'tchila and you didn't yet have yediyah b'sof, but someday you might turn up retroactively that 5 years ago, when in the Beis Hamikdash, now you remember that you were actually telling me at that time, right? So those 4 Yom Kippurs which passed over you, when they made a Sarah Nasa Bifnim, that doesn't deprive you of your obligation when you finally remember to actually bring your own korban on your own. Okay, that's what the Pnei Moshe is referring to. Okay? Again, a case where you never knew to begin with. Even if you find out later on that you were telling me you wouldn't bring your own korban, right? So on that, the korbanos brought on the Yom Tovim atone in and of themselves. But a case where you yourself knew it one time, forgot, and maybe sometime in the future you will then remember. So until such time as you remember, the Korban Yom Kippur is only toilet. It leaves you dangling. There's still an obligation, if and when you ever remember, to bring your own korban. Okay? Says Amara, so Yishalo Kore Beregel, Yikor B'Leish Chodesh. Getting back to the topic on our Mishnah, a goat which was not brought on Yom Tov will be brought on Rosh Chodesh. Again, Rabbi Shimon himself said that it can flow from Yom Tov to Yom Tov because they all come on Tumas Mikdash V'Kodosha. So what is sacrifice of Yom Tov? It's Rosh Chodesh. Lokay Rosh Chodesh was sacrifice Chodesh, top of Vav Amarav, Yikarev La'aba. It's sacrificed on the next Rosh Chodesh, right? You have how many Rosh Chodeshim a year? No, actually 12. That's coming up. Good chav, but not correct. We'll see. Says the Gemara. Do you know why he said 11? No, Rosh Hashanah. But Lamaisa, the Gemara is going to deal with that later on. So says the Gemara. Lava shemitchil lo ukshu korban sibur elikarva al mizbeach hachitzo. Because initially the korban sibur were only consecrated that they should be brought on the outer mizbeach, and the specific purpose is not necessarily designated. And if it can't be a chatas now, it can be a chatas later on. Says Marav Kvar Kippur. Now the Gillian of Ryan takes out Yom Kippurim, but the Or Sameach leaves it in. And he said, "Avlo Kvar Kippur" would mean weren't you not already mechaper if you take the word Yom Kippurim with the chatos, whatever chatos you brought. In other words, you obviously on Rosh Chodesh you didn't sacrifice this goat, so you sacrificed another goat, right? So therefore, why? How can you leave it for the next Rosh Chodesh? Whatever kapara was supposed to atone was already atoned for by the goat you brought on that Rosh Chodesh, right? Let's say it was left over from Sukkot, and you're bringing Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, right? But you brought another goat Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, so how can you then push it off to Rosh Chodesh Kislev? Makes no sense, right? It's like similar to Chatas Shekipru Baalel. The Chatas is already atoned, it's atoned for, and in some other way, you can't bring it afterwards. You got to either, I forget if you kill it or if you let it graze, but you can, I think you kill it, but you can't. So how come over here you can? You can leave it, if they brought another carbon, you miss Sukkot, and you miss Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, and you miss Rosh Chodesh Kislev, what's the difference, right? But the way, again, as I said, the Yerushalmi Shavuos, he leaves in Yom Kippur. And he wants to learn from here that an issue that Tumas Mikdash V'Kodoshav is also atoned for by Yom Kippur itself. Okay? This is going to be a sugi which we'll either get to later tonight or tomorrow, where the Yom Kippur is mechaper without even korbanos. And he's asking specifically on a korban which should have been brought, say, on Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah. And it was not. And was not brought up to, so how can you use it on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan? Yom Kippur is already mechaper, even how can you use it on Sukkot. But alright, so that's how he learns it. Anyway, be that as it may, the answer replies no matter whether you learn that Yom Kippur is mechaper or the interceding Rosh Chodesh was metaper. Or Ramana said, Mikema Duchsiv, once it says, Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, since all of them together, can be Shekula mechapin kapara achas. And we should add in, of course, Rosh Chodoshim, right? They're all bunched together. So therefore that gives up fudgeability, right? One can fudge it, and if it doesn't work for, it wasn't used, one Rosh Chodesh and one Yativ, it continues down the line. Okay? Says, Rabun says, Mikemich kulam mechapin, al kultu, he says, this svara. You don't need the pasuk. Mikemich kulam mechapin, al tuas mita roshav, since they all atone for the Avera of Tumas Mikdash Kodashav, Kemisha Kulam Mechapin Kapara Achas, it's as if they also could have the same Kapara, and therefore they can go from one Yotzah to another. Rabbi Yaakov, now, says one of these great Yerushalmi Tzushtels, Rabbi Yaakov Baracha, you're going to like this one. Rabbi Yaakov Hashem said, Ho'ev elifnei ateibo v'yotesh Rosh Hashanah. If you're the Chazan Rosh Hashanah, and also if you're davening as a private individual, you don't mention Rosh Chodesh. Don't mention Rosh Chodesh, right? Do we mention Rosh Chodesh? No, we do not mention Rosh Chodesh, right? Well, actually, there is in the Machzor, though, there is a line which some people say, and based on the Sugya of Pasha, which goes, which one is that? Oh, it's not in here. Oh no, it is in here without parentheses, sorry. It says, Milvad olas ha-chodesh u'min chasa. In B'yom ha-chodesh ha-shvi'i v'chol ha-chodesh, it does says Milvad olas. I thought it was in parentheses in some Siddurim, maybe I'm mistaken. Okay. So I thought maybe that, no, we don't necessarily say that. Okay, we have a full chart still.
But it's just a generic statement of what's
Yeah, but that's Chodesh, you're mentioning Rosh Chodesh.
It doesn't, well, it also said Echad L'Chodesh in the beginning, the Yom Chodesh.
Yeah, but that's not Rosh Chodesh, that's referring to Rosh Hashanah, that's just the date Rosh Hashanah applies. Takes place, but it's not actually referring to the Rosh Chodesh, it's referring to the date of Rosh Hashanah. It's just the in here. No, it's also in here. It's also no Tzad Filu Siddur. So I was making it up. I thought it was in parentheses, but my mistake. Okay. Just, there's no. Malchus, yeah. Okay, so be that as it may. So he says you don't mention Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Chodesh. You don't mention Rosh Chodesh. Rabbi Yacha bar Papa said V'tani Kenan. We also learned the Brisa. However, if Ne'ateva b'yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah, somebody who passes before the Omid on the Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah b'Shachris in the morning, b'Shamar mispalel Shmoina. You have an 8. Now, of course, there are only 7 brachos, but it means on Shabbos. Beishamai says you add an 8th bracha for Shabbos. We put them together, right? Beisomim Sheva, because we put them together, Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah. Musa Beishamim Eser, because they separate out Shabbos. And Beisomim Tesha, Beisil says 9, because they put Shabbos together with Rosh Hashanah. Says, well, if you use Rosh Chodesh got its own bracha, then according to Beishamai it would be 11. According to Beis Hillel, of course, it would be 10, right? So we vice dois, it comes out, we don't say Rosh Chodesh separately. On my basis, Rabbi Yossi says, Ma pligin, when is there machlot tzir b'tzilum b'shamai? B'dover shetom bracha b'ifnei atzmo. Only by Shabbos, which usually requires some bracha. But Rosh Chodesh, afilu b'chol, even on a weekday, she'ena l'kailon, you only include them. It should be instead of yask, it should be maskir, and it should be one statement. She'ena l'kol maskir, you only include Rosh Chodesh. When do we mention Rosh Chodesh a weekday Shemona Esrei? Yalav Yova, which is included in another bracha. So therefore, maybe you do mention Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are arguing about Shabbos, because Shabbos might add another bracha. That's a separate issue. It's possible you do mention Rosh Chodesh, but you don't have to say additional bracha for it, right? In other words, we want to bring this as a raya, you don't even mention Rosh Chodesh. That is not true. You might mention Rosh Chodesh, it just doesn't rate its own bracha. Okay? So it says, so therefore, maybe we're not mentioning on the fact we don't mention it as a separate bracha. It's not right. We don't mention it at all in Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yossi boy. Now the Shaita so changes gears to Rabbi Bo Bar Memo. It's probably true because that's what the next line refers back to. So Rabbi Bo Bar Memo boy asks the question: Me'ata. If that's the case, now there's a little bit of a girsa problem here. So this is the way to read it. Me'ata echad mishnei sirei Rosh Hashanah. Okay, you only have shnei, right? But the Shaita so changes it to one of 2 sirei Rosh Hashanah. Now Rosh Hashanah bring two chatos. You bring 2 korban chatos on Rosh Hashanah. So let's say me'ata. One of the 2 go to Rosh Hashanah. Machmas, it's not actually Machmas Rosh Chodesh. Because of Rosh Chodesh, Ein Boin. It should be Ein Boin. It doesn't come. Okay, so you don't come because of Rosh Chodesh. You're going to say you have to take out the word ein over there. I just transpose the ein from the second line to the first line. They don't come because of Rosh Chodesh. The Taim are going to say tzorech la'asker Rosh Chodesh. You're going to say you have to mention Rosh Chodesh. Now it should say Elozeh v'zeh machmos Rosh Hashanah. They both come because of Rosh Hashanah. In other words, the 2 goats on Rosh Hashanah, they've not do Rosh Chodesh. We don't bring them because of Rosh Chodesh. Actually, now that I have the siddur, I should actually point that out, that it says here in the siddur, on which also corresponds to the Machzor, it says here that V'osimene shana shni shivatimim. Min chasam nitzkem kim dubar shashas ni lapor shnei sinai v'son kevis gayin knitzko ushnei siirim l'chaper. Normally by Musaf we say what? V'sorei echad l'chaper, right? Seriously, echad l'chatos l'chaper. But ushnei siirim l'chaper, and these two goats are beside the ushnei siirim kilchasim, two tmidim, mevaro lasa chodesh min chasa. In other words, the two goats of Rosh Hashanah are Rosh Hashanah goats. They're not Rosh Chodesh goats. Okay? Rosh Chodesh goat gets into our Shmoneh Esrei, but that's a separate goat. Okay? So therefore he says, if they're both because of Rosh Hashanah, why do you have to mention Rosh Chodesh? Torah itself said on Rosh Hashanah sacrifice these two goats and didn't mention anything about Rosh Chodesh. Yes, it's true that we have to do it anyway. But it's not mentioned, so therefore we should have mentioned Shmoneh Esrei, right? So that so Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabun, so Rabbi Yossi Rabun said, actually the truth is, the Gilin Ephraim puts in here Rav Mori's statement from 3 lines down. If you take a look down there, the 3 lines down from Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi is in the second line, Rabbi Yossi Rabun. So first let's put in Rabbi Mori's statement, or Bori it says here, but it's supposed to be Rav Mori, which is 3 lines down below that. Do you see that Rav Bori's statement? See it 3 lines below Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Bori, leis yachil. You can't say that the Rosh Chodesh is forsaken in Rosh Hashanah, because it says milvado lasa chodesh, which actually is this line in Shmoneh Esrei, right? You said it says explicitly that you do Rosh Chodesh Korban on Rosh Hashanah. It says in Torah itself milvado lasa chodesh, right? And besides that vote, milodor the tani for that which it says shnei masar l'shnei masar chodshei Hashanah. It says 12 for the 12 months of the year. So there certainly was a korban of Rosh Hashanah, of Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah, right? So therefore, how can you bring proof from here not to mention Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah? We know that it was mentioned by the Chumash itself. Muvado las Chodesh min chasa, right? So it says more, going back to Rabbi Yossi on the second of the widest of the wide lines. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi Muzedna. Don't you think he was asking a question? He was asking a good question. Is that what Rabbi Baba Memo asked? He was asking. It was a legitimate question. The Tani we learned, in other words, that you should not have to say Rosh Chodesh, because the Tani we learned Shnei Kivsei Atzeres, the 2 goats of Shavuos. Shavuos you bring two lambs actually. I said goats, but it's lambs. Ushnei Siyah Rosh Hashanah, and the 2 goats of Rosh Hashanah. In Kippur Rishon, we have a theological conundrum. Why did it bring 2? Isn't it redundant, right? In Kippur Rishon, Amar Sheni Mechaper. Why did the second one, right? They're both chatos. What do you need both for? So it says more al tuma she'ira ben zel lezeh. It atoned because of the tumah which occurred between the 2 of them. Now here clearly we see that the 2 goats brought on Rosh Hashanah are Rosh Hashanah goats, and they're both mechaper and tumah, right? Why bring both? Because of the 5 minutes of tumah which might occur between the 2 of them, right? Now I'll ask, well, which bring goats out and from item kasha on a maisa, but the maisa we see here that they're both because Dafka Rosh Hashanah. So you should mention Rosh Chodesh. Says Lamar, no. Below Rabbi Shimoni, you can't. That which it says that they both come to even Rabbi Shimon, who holds that you're mechalik kaporos, who holds that. Not that, although we don't know this yet, but later on it's going to come up, that the kapara of one goat is not like the kapara of the other goats. Nevertheless, he holds, and we actually know a little bit from our mission already. Because Rabbi Shimon said, there's a common denominator that the all mechaper on tumas mikdash v'kadasha, but some mechaper for tor shachol esatome, some mechaper for tummy shachol esator, some are mechaper for yesh bo yediyah betchila ve'ein bo yediyah besof, some are mechaper for ein bo yediyah lo betchila v'lo besof, some mechaper for yesh bo yediyah besof v'lo betchila. But nevertheless, he says the common denominator is that the all metayr tumas they all come for tumas mikdash v'kadasha. So too, it could be that the first goat comes for Rosh Hashanah, and the second goat comes for Rosh Chodesh, or vice versa. The first goat comes for Rosh Chodesh, the second goat comes for Rosh Hashanah. Hi, so if that's the case, why do you say there was mechaper one for whatever happened in between? I mean, the second one. It's mechaper for whatever happened between it and the first one. Say it has different types of kapara. Says more, even Rabbi Shimon holds there are different types of kapara. Can also hold this way, right? You can hold because there's a common denominator between the two. It's not saying that they're both brought for the same purpose. One might be Rosh Chodesh and one might be Rosh Hashanah. All it's saying is that yes, but besides that, they have a common denominator. Therefore, the second one is mechaper for anything which happened in the interim between it and the first one. Okay, so it's saying that. Lo Shimoni, the Rabbi Shimon Choyle Kaporos, the Kirkati going like Rabbi Shimon is Choyle Kaporos, and therefore this could also be and nevertheless one is mechaper for whatever the first one left over. So it's here the same thing. So Lamais we have no right. It could be that Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh. It could be that the two goats brought on Rosh Hashanah, one is Rosh Hashanah, one is Rosh Chodesh. Could be that that's the way it is. And therefore could be that one should mention both Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah. Nevertheless, the Gemara concludes, skipping what Rav Mori's statement which you read before, Chad Bar Abaye. One Bar Abaye, I don't know exactly what a Bar Abaye means. It says here in Pnei Moshe, one of the students of Abaye, but it's clearly not the case. Abaye doesn't mean right. So it could be Chad Bar Avuron, so it's a distinguished person. I don't know, obviously Abaye is a mistake. But anyway, over Kami Tevusi went before the Teva, V'loitka Deresh Yarche. And he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh, the Kalsune, and he was praised. If it was Abaye, then Abaye praised him, or maybe it's somebody else, but, bottom, maybe it's Ovin, I don't know. Whoever it was, he praised this person for not mentioning Rosh Chodesh. Because after all said and done, L'maisa, the way we have it in davening, I don't know if the way we have it in davening because of the result of Yerushalmi, or the Yerushalmi knew what we were going to have in davening, but L'maisa, the way it comes out is that these two goats are brought because of Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, we learn from this, we're not supposed to mention Rosh Chodesh for Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Rav Ashi asks, Hagat b'chosh shachtu shneim ka'achas. I don't understand. What happens, that assumes that they shech one in the morning and one a couple of hours later. But what about the shech that they're both in months, both goats? My tuma shiur ben zol. What tuma is there possibly between the two of them? Right? So Gemara's going to give fascinating answers. But first Gemara's question is it's redundant. If you spread them apart, so maybe there's a purpose to bring it to. If you do them right together, smack dab together, what's the reason? There's no Rabbi Buna Gevalt answer. The rule says, Ilu Yisrael, right? Ksherin. Am Yisrael, Ilu Yisrael Ksherin. I'm sorry, it should be Ilu, not Ilu. Ilu, if the Jews are kosher, Shemei Mavim Ashkava Torah, Lem Torah, and let's say nobody tackles Matam between the korbanos. Do you think we wouldn't bring a korban? In other words, we're giving a svala for the korban, but where we bring the korbanos not based on the svalas, but based on the Rotzen Hashem. The Meshech Chochmah brings out a strange thing, but he says that really, theoretically, a person can bring a chatos all the time because Am Yisrael always can eat chatos somehow, somewhere. But in any event, the Maisa, what the Gemara is saying is that yes, we're giving a reason for why the Torah gave it. But Lamaisa, we bring the korbanos because the Kosh Baruch Hu told us, even if the reason doesn't apply. And this is a big side usually by the Rabbanos, but here you see by the Raisos. By the Rabbanos we say, even if the tam doesn't apply, we do it anyway, right? Batal atam, lo batal adin. Even the reason no longer applies, the halacha still applies. But it's saying even in the Raisa, Even if the reason doesn't apply, we still to do the halacha, right? Because we don't dash in time of the crop. We go by what it says, not what by the possible reasons might be. Okay? It says more Rabbi Yochanan said, you can change. Now, that means that you can change the tamid from which was not sacrificed 1 year to fiscal year next year. You sell it and you buy it back. There's a whole eitzah how to do it to make it work for come the Truma Salishka of the following year from the funds. But Lamaisi, you can switch over. Rabbi Shimon Emishan. According to Rabbi Shimon, you can't switch over. There's no such thing. Unless they get a mum, you sell them and then you use the money to buy over, but you can't switch them over themselves. Says the Gemara, if a Chachamim hold you could change karbanos over from 1 year to the next. The Tamar Marshi Karbanos. Why are they asking question whether you can sacrifice the soil left over from Rosh Chodesh on Regel or from Regel on Rosh Chodesh? Of course, you could change over from year to year. Why can't you change over from Rosh Chodesh to Yom? So then, B'shitas Shavuos. No, there's part of Rabbi Shimon according to his line of reasoning. B'shitas according to your line of reasoning, you say you can't change a tamid from fiscal year 5760 to 5761. So if that's the case, what about bringing the Sirei Chatos, one or the other, one for Yom different time, Rosh Chodesh, or vice versa? Rabbi Yisrael says, no, that's okay. Why? She'ein karbanos, and this is a fact Rabbi Shimon answered. She'ein karbanos ha'ativ u'nikvoim, elo it should be b'shchita, or b'kreva. In other words, although they're designated b'chatos, the specific type or date of the chatos is not determined until it's actually slaughtered. Or until it's with kreva would also mean the same thing. So therefore, till that point, it ain't over till it's over, and it comes ultimately for a common denominator. That's Rabbi Shimon holds you can transfer over. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda said, the Brisa l'shem also zevach shu karev lishmo, for the purpose of that korban for which it's ultimately sacrificed, who kaddish mishar rishon. It's like a gloy milsim afreya. And which actually becomes clarified again. You can't change the chatas to the oil and oil to the. It's not the same as Starbucks. Not the same. No. Rabbi Shimon Yehuda Omer Bishmo. The Shimon says the name of Rabbi Shimon. The goats brought Rosh Chodesh. Mechapil haTor she'achal haTamei. They atone for a Tor who ate from Tamei. The Tor ate from Tamei Karbar. Most of the Shiragoli to the Karbanos of Regalim additional kapara. Shemechapil haTor she'achal haTamei. They atone for a Tor who ate Tamei, and also a case where you never became aware, neither before nor after, of your tuma, either before or after you ate neither before nor after you entered Beis Hamikdash or ate korbanos. Okay? Mostly Yom Kippur adds an additional layer of kapara. Shemechapli, they atone for Ator Shachas Tamei, and a Tor person who ate Tamei. V'al Shem B'Yidiyah B'Tchilo B'Sof, and a case where there was no awareness either before nor afterwards. V'al Shem B'Yidiyah B'Tchilo, but they also atone for a case where there was no knowledge at the beginning. Al V'yesh B'Yidiyah B'Sof, but there is knowledge at the end. That the God of Yom Kippur is Mechaper. Amrlo, they said, so they said to him, so if that's the case, how could Rabbi Shimon say they could be sacrificed for each other? They don't atone for the same thing, right? They're chilukei kaporos, language which Yerushalmi uses them out. So how can you sacrifice one for the other? Actually, asks a question. He said yes. So he said it came. You shall Yom Kippur and Kraven Rosh Chodesh. I understand that the Yom Kippur one, which is more inclusive, can be sacrificed in Rosh Chodesh because it includes it and transcends it. Rosh Chodesh craving Yom Kippur, but Rosh Chodesh, which only atones one type of atonement, how can you sacrifice for the Yom Kippur Chatos, the Chapa Kapar Sheshem, which atones for 3, which goes beyond its original parameters. Says Maram Len says that Kulam Boy L'Chabetus Mitlash Kadashim. The same thing we said in the previous mission. They all have the common denominator of coming to us Mitlash Kadashim, but that's why they are fungible. Okay, or fungible. I'm not sure that it's between fungible and fungible is. Okay, says more further. Rabbi Yossi Drumin. Is there a chiluk? It's fungible. It's not fungible. Okay, sorry. Is that correct? You sound authoritative when you say that.
I haven't. Teachers used to use that in law school. I don't know why. It's fungible.
Fungible. Okay. Says more. We'll have to take you at your word. Rabbi Yossi Drumia. Rabbi Yossi Drumia said, Drumia means from Rome or from the south. Come Rabbi Yonah in front of Rabbi Yonah. Hain tzurch lemiste. Really, we should learn the opposite way. Well, this way the question should be. This is how one Rabbanah should have asked Yerushalmi Shavuos. In Cain, we understand Rosh Chodesh and Krem Yom Kippur. Rosh Chodesh should be the Rosh Chodesh carbon, which was a limited kapara, should be able to be used for Yom Kippur, which is a greater kapara. She came malam because she maridin. Because in going up in kedusha, right, it was only meant to be a measly Rosh Chodesh carbon, but now it can be Yom Kippur carbon. I will show Yom Kippur main Krem Rosh Chodesh, but it should be the other way around. Yom Kippur carbon shouldn't be able to be sacrificed to Rosh Chodesh. Shem maridin makush. It's going down. It should be able to go up, not go down. The opposite question of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said you should be able to sacrifice Yom Kippur on a Rosh Chodesh, not a Rosh Chodesh on Yom Kippur. It should be the opposite question. Should you sacrifice Rosh Chodesh Yom Kippur, Mailam B'Kodesh, going up, but not Yom Kippur on Rosh Chodesh, going down. Says the Gemara, just ignores that. Rabbi Elazar B'Shem B'Shem Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi said Rabbi Potar Lo Potar Choyrin. He gave a different spin on this. Literally, a different resolution. Said, in Ken Yushal, this is the way they should have asked. In Ken Yushal Yom Kippurim, Krem Rosh Chodesh, once the Yom Kippur should be sacrificed Rosh Chodesh, going down. That should be okay. Why should Mechapi Kaparos and Kaparos Rosh Chodesh, which is really what I'm saying. They told me themselves and the told me Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, they can, since they include and transcend Rosh Chodesh, they go down to Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodeshim. Any Krem Yom Kippur, but the ones that Rosh Chodesh should not be able to sacrifice Yom Kippur. Shein Mechapi al Kaparos because they can't be extended beyond their original parameters. And the Gemara gives an interesting marshal to sustain this version of the question. And it's a weird marshal. That's why I'm saying it's interesting. If a guy ate 5 zaysim of chaylev, of some prohibition, 5 kazayas worth of pig, or whatever it is, of pig you don't bring carbon for, of chaylev and dam. V'yivish arba karbanos, and he set aside 4 karbanos. He was a moron. He counted 4 to be 5, right? Right? Shema Kippur. Do we say that he was mechaper? No, because you need to have 5. He only had 4, right? So too, if you sacrifice Rosh Chodesh's carbon, which is of limited kapar, on Yom Kippur, do you think you're mechaper? No, because you only sacrifice something which is mechaper on 1. Tar shachal torme. Now it's mechaper on 2 additional ones. So only if you sacrifice Yom Kippur's carbon on Rosh Chodesh, that should be good enough, because although it should be like hifish mishachal chelev. Arba zaysim. Oh, it says chaylev here. I didn't notice it before. Vishol chaylev arba zaysim. Then we had 4 olive worths of chaylev. Vifish chamisha karbanos. It set aside 5 karbanos. Sav arba, thinking it's 4. Lokoshken, right? He certainly is yotzi, right? And of course he's yotzi, right? He sacrificed an extra korban. It might be chulin bazar the extra korban, but for sure he's yotzi. Therefore he had to sacrifice, right? So too, if you sacrifice Yom Kippur on Rosh Chodesh, might be overkill, and maybe the overkill is not so good, but the Ma'aser it should work, right? Now this is the
first part of this. There wasn't full kapara.
That's right, and therefore he's saying a Rosh Chodesh korban on Yom Kippur shouldn't work to achieve full kapara, because you're extending its parameters. It's like somebody which doesn't work, just so you can't 4 korbanos don't cover 5 kazesim. So the Korban Chodesh should not cover for Yom Kippur. But the other way around, when you're overkilling, bring 5 korbanos on 4 things, that works. So to the Yom Kippur korban on Rosh Chodesh needs, that should work as well. Okay? Now the truth is, this is going on the next part of the Mishnah. How do we know that you can switch back and forth because they're all Tumas Mikdash or Kadosha? Because the Shimon says all common denominator. 32 Sirin Kravim ala Tzibor B'chol Shana. There are 32. I don't remember this from the Bavli. I don't think it's. I'm pretty sure it's not there. But Shimon says 32 goats were brought on the Tzibor every year. 31 outside the Kodesh Me'acholin. They're eaten. Ve'achol Bifnim, one on the inside, which you spring on the Kaporos Ve'enu Nechol. It's not eaten. The Soy Mishlech. Besides that, there is additional Soy Mishlech, the goat which is sent La Zozo, off the cliff, which is the 33rd goat. Shtei Masor Chadshei Shana, that's 12. Shmoyne B'chag, 8 on Sukkot, that's 20. Shiva Pesach, 7 on Pesach, that's 27. Shnai Batzeres, 2 on Shavuos, that's 29. Echa B'Gla Yom, on Shavuos, one because of the day, the Echa B'Gla Lechem, and the other because of the bread. Rosh Hashanah, Echa Rosh Hashanah, one on Rosh Hashanah, I lost count, that's 30, I think. Echa B'Yom Kippur, one on Yom Kippur, and one on Yom Kippur. Interesting. Echa Rosh Hashanah, the way Rabbi Shimon is learning, I didn't even chop this before. This the Gemara is referring to. Now I see. What I know, Rabbi said Rabbi Shimon holds Chiluk Kaparos, right? That's referring to here. Rabbi Shimon holds Chiluk Kaparos. I mentioned before, Rabbi Shimon can hold that Rosh Hashanah, that the 2 goats brought on Rosh Hashanah are one for Rosh Hashanah and one for Rosh Chodesh. Here you see it explicitly, because he's saying that there are 12 goats for the 12 months of the year, plus one on Rosh Hashanah. That means that it's taka for two per two, right? Instead of 2 for Rosh Hashanah, there's 1 for Rosh Chodesh, 1 for Rosh Hashanah. So it's explicit here that it's Chiluk Kaparos. Okay, very good.
What about Yom Kippur? He just says 1, but it's supposed to be 2.
No, because the one Bachutz he counts. He counts the one with Schepper there. Okay, so came to Shama Moshe came. Now it's fascinating what the Gemara says here. What's Moshe 32 karbanos? He said, "Ma'ata mishabasi other suffix avera." Somebody has a question of an avera, right? Because here he's not sure he didn't. These are cases of Ein Bo Yediyah, but he doesn't know he did an avera, right? So somebody did a suffix carbon. Tzarech lavi kol karbanos alol. He's bringing all these karbanos alachas kamas. Somebody who's amazing. It's very depressing, right? It's bad for your bottom line too. How many karbanos you have to bring, right? So B'tzum Chuma. B'Shem Rabbi Yerushalmi said, B'Shosh Amar Kosh Baruch Hu L'Moshe. He said to Moshe, V'Yisvadeh Olav. Says he said to Moshe, you know what? For all that areas of Klal Yisrael, as we're going to see in the next mission, which we'll get to tomorrow. I mean, we'll get to more tomorrow. For all that areas of Klal Yisrael, the Shir HaMishtalech is Mechaper. So Mishlech is the Vidui. Yischiv Amar Mizmor L'Soida. He started saying Mizmor L'Soida. It's one of the Tehillim which Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. The Hashem B'Yisvadeh Allah, because he gave Shevach V'Odot HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the vidui of the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippur and the Soyer Mishlech, that himself was mechaper. Yes, I required 32 korbanos for Tumas Mikdash Kodashim. But other Averis, all of them go to Soyer Mishlech with Tshuva, of course. Vidui is Tshuva. Okay. V'azodon Tumas Mikdash Kodashim, and now we go to the Soyer Mishlech. Azodon Tumas Mikdash Kodashim, person intentionally defiled the base of Mikdash and Kochim, Soyer Nas Bifnim, then the soyer which is done inside on Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, and the day of Yom Kippur is mechaper. Okay, so that's an intentional tumas mikdash. V'ashar aveis and the other aveis of Torah, hacham kales, lighter ones, v'chamrus, and more severe ones. Hasdoinis, intentional ones, and shkokus, unintentional ones. Haidar, ones you're aware of, v'lo ones you're not aware of. Asay, mitzvah say v'lo sasay. Krisus umisas based in. Soyer Mishlech Mechaper. All of those for Soyer Mishlech Mechaper. Says Maradoi. This is the way to read our Mishnah. Mechaper alas doines. It's not so posh. It's Mechaper alas doines. The Soyer apnimi. The Soyer on the inside. It's Mechaper alas doines. but an intentional tumas the toilet ala shkogos. On shkogos, it's toilet, because if you find out, right, again, you had yediyah b'tchila, forgotten that yediyah b'soif, then you have to still bring the korban after Yom Kippur. On that, Yom Kippur is only toilet, it's not actually mechaber. Okay? Says the Gemara, Loi kalos losa say, Loi chamuros kritzos misabeitz. And I said, why is it separate? Two separate categories: kalos and chamuros, and asay and losa asay and kritzos misabeitz. And those are common categories. I'm ready said kini masi is the way to read the Mishnah. Hakalos v'chamuros, the kalos and chamuros, lighter sins and severe sins. Also hakalos, those lighter sins, ben shasam bezona, ben shasam b'shkoga, whether you did them intentionally or unintentionally. V'osan hashkogos, and those unintentional sins, ben shnisvadei lo b'hen, ben shloisvadei lo b'hen, whether you're aware of them or not, Yom Kippur is mechaber. Anyway, hakalos is all part of the answer. And then what I was going to ask about this gets tomorrow. What are kalos? I say velos. I say. What are chamuros? Krisos and misas based. Okay, that's how to read the Mishnah. Kishem shasoya pnimi shasoya nasim ifnim chapel zoyis etolish kogos. Just like the soya which is made on soya is mechaper on zoyis. The tolish kogos, but on shkogos, when you find out you have to be in korban. Afsar mishnalech came. So too on the soy mishtalech, the soy sent out, it's mechaper on mezid, but on shogeg it's not mechaper. It's only toilet. If you ever find out about it, you have to bring a korban after Yom Kippur as well. Micha lo hoda. I understand if a person is not aware, right? Hoda. If a person is aware of his sin, it sounded like before the soy mishtalech is mechaper, nonetheless. It's not true. Lo chayintai that we learn minayin l'chuyavi chatos v'shamos v'adoyin. A person definitely chayav a korban shavali Yom Kippurim, even though Yom Kippur passed over him. Shechayav lohavi achar Yom Kippurim. If a person is bringing the korban after Yom Kippur, who's patur? Who does Yom Kippur exempt? Only chayav shashamos fluyim paturim. Person who never knew if he sinned or not was mesupak, and that there's a special halacha Yom Kippur is mechaper. If you have to bring an Asham Toli because you don't know if you committed sin or not, it's only up till Yom Kippur. Once Yom Kippur passes, you're exempt unless you find out you definitely committed the sin. Okay? So that Yom Kippur is a mechaper, but not on Hoda. Says Mar, you're right. If he knows the suffix, of course that a vadai chiyuv Yom Kippur is not mechaper. So that whether he knows the suffix or not, Yom Kippur is mechaper for Asham Toli. Meaning that let's say you only found out about your suffix aver after Yom Kippur, but you had committed the suffix aver before Yom Kippur, so you don't have to bring an Asham Toli because that Yom Kippur just passed over you, served in lieu of your Asham Toli. You don't have to bring the Asham Toli if you found out you did that aver before Yom Kippur and found out before Yom Kippur. Then that's a stopgap measure till Yom Kippur. You have to bring an Asham Toli. So whether you knew about your suffix or not, Yom Kippur is mechaper for an Asham Toli, but it's not mechaper for an Asham Badai. So says the Gemara. Well, actually, we'll leave this for tomorrow night. We'll keep it. It's very late.